Hey guys, how you doing? It's your boy Jay. Today I'm going to be removing the turbocharger from my Legacy. Just started pulling it off and I'm already seeing a few things already. Okay, thus far I've put that aside there. If you can look, this is all oil on the inside of the intercooler. Yep, interesting. Let's get this stuff out. Alright, so I finally got the turbo out of the car, and it took me a while to get it out because there were like so many. I don't know, it just took me a while to get the turbo out of the car. Here we go. Turbo is on the ground. Look at that. See that? All chewed up. I'm just gonna put this TD04 in there so I could just at least get the car to drive it around so I can register it. So day number 2, I'm here. Well, it's daylight now. So now I got the turbo in the car. That's a TD04. But then I ran into a snag last night. That the banjo bolt from the TD05 is bigger. So the inlet here for the turbo feed line is smaller. For the TD04 to the TD05, the 16G. And the other problem that I ran into as well, if you look right here, look, where the intercooler has to fit on. This stuff is in the way. All this stuff is in the way. So this is supposed to be sitting over that way, not this way. I took the turbo apart. Well, not all of it, but if you look here, you can see that. Look at how chewed up that is. See that? Hence why all the smoke was coming out. It bruised all of that right in there. Alright, so now I'm on the second turbocharger. So, it's been a few days later, now I got the part for my car that I needed so I could start it up. Alright, so I got it running again. So now we gotta put it all back together and take it out for a test drive. Alright, so now I took the car for a test drive, drove it out, and realized that I had more problems. I'll show you here right now, alright? The secondary air pump was in the way, under the bottom over here. So on the inside, you can't really plug that hose back onto the turbo, it being in the way. So it's either that secondary air pump is going to be unplugged or it's going to be plugged in without this on it. So I chose the latter to plug this, put this hose on, and then leave the secondary air pump out. Now that caused a check engine light to go off. Obviously that was a problem for me. So what I did, I pulled the hose back off, and I can't show it to you because it's all the way down on the inside. Now I'm going to use this plug as an example. What I did with that plug was I took the top off over here because that plug was so high. It sits like maybe about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch taller, and I cut the top of it off, and then I plugged it in the bottom, and then that allowed me the room where I could put that hose back on without compromising having the secondary air pump not plugged in and this one plugged in. Then I had another problem where I was not getting a good air to fuel ratio. This hose right here, this plastic one that came from the factory, it looks okay on the front here, but on the inside where it's plugged into the turbo, if you can see it down there, I had to put a zip tie on it to keep it onto the inlet of the turbo, but it's dry rotten. This piece right here is no good. So I ordered another piece online, and this is what I got. Mishimoto silicone goes from the airbox over here and replaces that piece. So, and that piece really been bothering me because I have to go take the car for a state inspection. And when I got there, they told me like, hey, your car is not ready. I know it doesn't have a catalytic converter in it.
Catalytic converter.
What they told me is that that secondary air pump code is still there, even though I cleared it out. So I unplugged the battery and left it there maybe for 2 days. The ECU will reset. I'm sorry, all this noise. I live right next to a main road over here. And it's a light right here. I live right under a light. I can't wait to move from this place. Anyway, so let's carry on with the job. I'm gonna go replace this thing. Okay, all right, so now we got the original inlet off. I'm gonna replace it with the aftermarket piece. I took the blow off valve return line. I had to cut it in half in order to get it out. I won't be using it again, but that was a pain in the butt to get out. It's like I was pulling on it, I couldn't figure out why the damn thing wasn't coming out, and then I realized it has a 10mm bolt that was holding it in there. But in this section right here underneath the manifold, it's really hard to get out. In here, you see the gap under here and the turbo on the inside there. Okay, so I gave up on what I was doing because I stopped for a second and I realized, like the other day, that I didn't have any boost in the car, and I realized that one of these solenoids were broken. So I started doing some work on the car, trying to put, as you saw in the last clip that I was doing, I was trying to put the silicone intake manifold, and it took me too long to try to get that thing off. Really long to get that thing off. So I called it a night. I stopped and I regrouped. This hose to get in there, I have to remove the intake manifold to get under there. From one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. But I love the challenge. So try to get this intake manifold off and get that hose in there and try to see if I can find any hoses that been dry rotted or whatever. And I want to get this car properly fixed so I could get it and pass the state inspection. Anyway, so on to the next one. We're gonna try to, we're gonna remove the intake manifold to get under there. I already loosened up a few bolts already in there. And another thing I discovered is that if you want to put this hose in there, because on the Legacies, the way how they're set up, you have to run the blow-off valve on atmospheric pressure. So it will be blowing on atmosphere rather than back into the intake plan. So I had to block that hole off that sits on the side of it. Alright, so I just had to go to the store a little while ago. I ended up pulling the whole turbo back out of the car. Recently what happened is I put the turbocharger in the car, which I have the turbocharger right here. Woo! I put the turbocharger in the car, and this is the oil return line on the bottom right here. You see this little hose right here? What happened is I put the hose in. It was so hard that it pushed all the way down. So when I put the turbo on the top, the hose was barely on the top of it like that. And this thing is hard as rock right now. Since I'm doing the air intake, I could probably plug it on at the same time. A piece of measurement for this piece, but it's hard, and I don't think I want to use this again. So I went to the store, I got some nice soft hose, so I'm just trying to kill a few birds with one stone, you know. It's kind of like those while you're in there kind of jobs. But I can tell that the turbo is not leaking any oil. The smoke was only there because of excess oil that was in the exhaust system. So anyway, I'm gonna go pull this piece off, measure it up, and put this thing back in there. All right.